All right, so a good amount. I find that that's probably one of the hardest things that traders need to understand is the frequency needs to be really on point and how to step away from the screens. So I talked to a bunch of experienced traders, some people that actually trade on trading floors. They actually require traders to get off the desk after they take a loss. And how many of you guys can actually pull yourself away from the screens after a loss? Yeah, exactly. It's so hard. It's like the market sucks you back in and you can't get away from the charts because you want to be able to go back in and you see another setup, but many times it kind of burns you. So with that being said, obviously Ryan's going to talk about how to take losses as a professional.
What's going on, guys? I'm going to tell you how to lose. Just don't. All right, that's okay. So yeah, my name's Ryan. Is Mike sound good? Just all right. I've been trading for I think since I was like 16, but like it's like trading because I was watching YouTube videos. You know, one day I was at my dad's house and I was like working as a dishwasher, and I'm like, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work a 9 to 5, so I just started like grinding YouTube. And there's a lot of information out there for free, and that's kind of where I started. And I never like traded until I was 18. I never like learned ICT until like 2 or 3 years ago. So that's when I like really knew what I was doing. But you know, I was getting into it. I was dabbling into it. You know, I got into the AMC and GME thing a little bit, but I didn't really know how to trade. So like when people ask how long I've been trading, like there's no like definite answer. I feel like. I graduated. So I went to a college in New York, and I actually went to college to stall time because like I started off profitable with penny stocks, and then I actually became unprofitable again with options because I don't know how I just stuck to picking contracts. And I ended up stalling time in college because I was like, if I can go to college and not work, I know I'm gonna have time in my classes to trade, and that felt better than 9 to 5 because how you're gonna trade there. So I stalled a lot of time, and I actually ended up graduating because my parents made like a 401k with me, and I was 2 years in and I didn't need to be there anymore, but I graduated anyways with a cybersecurity degree. So I kind of have a degree as a backup plan, but I probably won't need it now. And I've been making other moves, like I just bought a duplex. You know, it all starts with trading, then you get into real estate. Some of you may know. So yeah, thank you. I just closed it last week. So yeah. So I'm a 22-year-old, just I guess kid, just bought a duplex. You know, I'm just living my dream right now. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me, and yeah, that's it for now. So I have this screenshot up here, and for those of you who don't know, I've live streamed like every day to like 1,000 people for the last like 2 years. I mean, it depends on the people, but someone sent me this earlier, and I just want to ask you, raise your hand if you've ever done this before. Yeah, so I actually used to do this like before I knew what I was doing, and it's just because like you don't have a strategy and you don't trust anything. So someone sent me this, I'm like, oh, this is perfect to use it for my presentation, and it's very relatable to a lot of people, and this is where everyone starts off. You know, you take a loss, but then you don't. But then the candle goes in your direction, then it doesn't, and you're like, wait a minute, I took the loss, let me get back in, and my play can still work. And that's just like people who don't have a plan and who don't have a working strategy. So if this is you, you need to start with a working strategy first. Okay, that's like the main. So like, I hope none of you guys do this anymore. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but. That's like the first step to actually learning how to take a loss. Like have a strategy and know when to get out, and backtest enough to know if you do get out and you do get stopped out, typically the market's not going to just instantly reverse, okay? And as many of you guys know, on ICT you want to wait for the manipulation leg, so usually that can be avoided if you wait for the manipulation leg. But again, I just want to show this because it's a very relatable kind of screenshot, so I'm sure you've all been there. So I'm like a 1-hour trader, and I don't know if I have a lot of ads on Instagram, and I'm always the guy who like I always teach like an 80% win rate strategy, and there's been months where I haven't taken a loss. I've traded on a lot of different accounts, so like I say that with a grain of salt because I'm sure many of you have traded different accounts where some accounts you have a really high win rate and in other accounts you have a low win rate. So it's not overall, but I've had months where I've legitimately just haven't lost a trade. And I asked my students, I'm like, I was trying to find a loss because I don't think taking a loss in like 3 weeks, and I was trying to find a loss, and I asked my students, and it took someone an hour to find this. So this is like, I'm not going to go on my strategy, but I basically only take inversion for rally gaps because to me, when you kind of get like this V shape and then inverse this immediately right away, I hardly ever see us fail to go to this next high. And this is one of those very few instances where we actually don't go to the next high, and that's where I typically move stop to break even. So it's a very like risk-free strategy once you get to that point where I move stop to break even. And you know, it's just one of those few instances where this would be technically a loss. And I just want to show you, like, losing is okay. And raise your hand if you played sports growing up. Okay, so I played a lot of sports, and our team, like my high school team, was pretty good. We were in like a really small kind of area, and we hit up all my friends and stuff. We were really good, so we didn't really lose that much. And before I got into trading, I'm very, very competitive. And what happened was when I got into trading, you know, I'd be like, yeah, I'm never gonna lose a trade. I'm gonna use all these indicators and I'm never gonna lose. You know, I took the same mindset in sports, and I literally, like, I thought that I could never lose in trading. And when you lost in, like, so I was a soccer player. When you lost in soccer, like, it sucked. Like, but the game was over, you could do nothing about it. And when that happened to me in trading, that's when I started revenge trading, because me being as competitive as I am, I couldn't accept it because we almost never lost in sports. So if I lost in trading, I just like, oh my, because I wasn't used to it. I wasn't used to the feeling. And you have to learn how to lose. And I never understand that. Like, people know how to lose, but they don't understand how to lose, if that makes sense. It's two different, it's very different. We have to learn, like, how to lose. And I was talking to Rodrigo yesterday in the car, and he needed some really good advice for one of the vlog I'm doing. But you have to learn your behavior, learn how you feel when you lose, and like that's really where it kind of helped me. So his advice was really good. You'll probably hear it at some point from him. But so yeah, I'm like a 1-to-1 hour trader. You know, I don't go for if my win rate was like 90% and I was going for 5 hour trades, just leave the conference because I'd be lying to you. That's just probably not possible. So yeah, the sports, I'm sure many people can relate to the sports thing, but I talked to another trader the other day, and he's in the same boat. He grew up playing basketball, and you know, they won a lot. So when he took a loss in trading, he just couldn't deal with it because they just won so much in basketball. It sucks. And I'm over the next few slides, I do have some solutions. So I'll kind of tell you guys what I do or how I learned to lose. And yeah, it's basically what I'm going to be talking about. So this is just like a random trade I took, I think 2 or 3 days ago. It was like a 1 hour trade. Just reading my notes here 1 second. And here's the thing. Once you have a working strategy, how many people here, raise your hand if, how many people have seen your trade setup and you totally miss it, and then 5 minutes later you try to force something else that's not your setup, and then 2 hours later, you see your trade set up again, and you're like, oh, why didn't I just wait for this? Has that ever happened to you guys? So I'm gonna be showing you now. So this is the setup I took, right? I took the setup, and later in that day, okay, we got this. And it's the same model, it's just the opposite way. It's basically just using the inversion fair value gap, you know. And I didn't take this trade because I was done for the day when I took this one. And a lot of my students, they come to me, they're like, Daji, if you took this trade and this is a win, and then you see this and it's an A+ setup, so I always like to rate my setups, they always ask me, like, how do I not feel FOMO when I see this trade if I don't take it? And the reason is because I've been trading for so long where I know, and this is 100% a fact, I will see the same setup for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. This will happen again, and so will this. I've taken trades exactly like it a million times, and until you have the screen time to understand that, it's hard. It's really hard as a new trader, because as a new trader, you see this, and you're like, oh my God, it's such a good trade, and you think you're never gonna see it again, but that's false. Once you trade long enough, you will see the same setup over and over and over again. ICT traders know setups repeat and repeat and repeat, and that's one thing that really helped me with okay, I see a setup, I don't take it, maybe I'm going to the bathroom. The amount of times someone's gone to the bathroom when I've like alerted a setup and they're like, oh, I missed it. And then they revenge trade the next setup that sucks after. I'm like, dude, just wait. Don't go to the bathroom, or wait, you know, or set an alert, I don't know. But the amount of people who have done that is just crazy to me. And you know, when I learned that the market's always going to be there, which you don't learn it, you gain it through experience. It just, you can't learn on the first day. That's where a lot of, and that's why so many people get up. You can't learn to lose on the first day. But once you trade long enough and understand, like, you will see your setup a million more times, and you have the screen time, which it's different for everyone, but I'd say like 2 to 3 years is a good spot to where you're going to start seeing the same setup. That's where you really avoid the thing I just talked about. You know, you miss a trade and you force another trade that's not even your trading setup, but you're just mad you missed the first trade. And you know, I stopped doing that like 2 years ago because I'm like, because so many times I do that, and an hour later I'd see like an actual, I like to refer to things as a light bulb setup. And to me, a light bulb setup comes when you least expect it, but it's something you've seen before. You're like, wait a minute, it jumps out at you, you've seen it before. And I just stopped doing that BS where, okay, you missed this trade, okay, now I'm gonna force this trade. And when you learn to wait for the light bulb setup, you just learn to overall stop forcing trades, you know, even if you miss one. So, good example of a one I took, and I didn't take this loss, or I didn't take this one, but I had no FOMO because I know I'm gonna see this again. You know, and you just have to understand that. And you won't understand it unless you backtest, unless you have years in the market, and 90% of people fail to get to that point, which sucks, but I mean, I can't motivate you. My friends always ask me to learn how to trading, but I can't motivate them. You have to be motivated yourself. So it's just like a big thing in trading. So this is this really, someone joined my Discord and did like a class with me, and it really left an impression. He was talking about like trading psychology, and he gave us a question, and he basically said, is it a good business decision? Right? It almost feels, does anyone play video games, or did anyone play video games? I know you guys, I played Fortnite with you one time, but it almost feels like a game coming to the market, but it's really not. It's like you're trading against, I always tell people, you're literally trading against top tier traders who are been trading for 20, 30 years, sitting on floors. Now, obviously I believe in it's more of an algorithm, but you're still trading against algorithms, you're still trading against robots. And meanwhile, I'm just a 22-year-old kid, like how am I supposed to compete with those guys? And it makes you realize how like professional and serious you have to be. And this guy who did this class, basically was scoping this question, is this a good business decision? Like every single time before you hit that button, you have to understand, is it a good business decision? Okay, when you place a stop loss, right? Is stopping out here a good business decision? And I really liked how he framed that because it really stuck to me, because it really makes you understand how serious trading actually is. And when you look at trading as a business, because it is a business, it's your business, and you're pressing the buttons, right? Every button you take impacts your trading account, which is your business, right? And when you look at it in the scope of that, it really makes you take time and kind of not do dumb stuff like this first screenshot you saw. Do you think, raise your hand if you think that first slide I showed you all those executions was a good business decision? Exactly, no one. So it really kind of puts in perspective with how important, like, okay, when I'm clicking, when I move my mouse and I'm pressing that button, is this a good business decision? Think about it every time before you enter a trade. Even when you're stopping out, or even when you're like, I'm gonna move my stop lower, I think I'm still right. Is that a good business decision? Probably not. You know, if you move your stop loss, that's automatically not a good business decision, right? If you're managing a true business with like $100 million business, do you think that guy would do it? No, definitely not. And yeah, I think it's really important to understand that. And there's a story, it's a made up story about a guy. He's at the gym, and you know, he's working, but he's not really working hard enough. You know, he's lazy. He's trying to lift weights. He's trying to lose weight, or he's trying to lose weight, and he's trying to, you know, get jacked. But he's struggling, and his friend tells him, maybe you're not fat enough. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? And it basically means, like, when you're trading the market, as a new trader, like, you gotta take losses to stop taking losses, if that makes sense. Same guy at the gym, like, maybe he wasn't fat enough, you know, maybe he needed to see himself in a lower state in order to be truly motivated. You know, you need to take losses to be truly motivated to, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing what that I showed you the first picture. You know, hopefully, like I said, hopefully you guys aren't doing that anymore. But sometimes you need to go through the struggle and the pain of doing that BS where you're clicking buy, sell, and you need to do it so much that you realize one day, you know, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. This is too far. So it kind of it's the same reference to like the gym guy, you know, maybe you're not fat enough. So that's a good way to look at it too. It's kind of another point that this guy kind of brought up. The same guy kind of asked it, is it a good business decision? And do you guys all use TradingView? There's an indicator called AGFX watermark. Some of you guys probably know it. And if you have that, if you use that, you can actually change what the words say, so it's always in your chart. And I had a couple of charts that says, I changed it. I changed my name and then I changed it to, is this a good business decision? So you can do that, which obviously will stay in your chart all the time, so it's a good reminder before you press a button. Or you could do what I'm going to talk about next, 10% or 90%. Okay, so as you guys know, 10% of traders make it realistically, and I'm not sure. I just say that because that's what everyone else says, so I don't even know if that's real or not. But I like this saying: are you part of the 10% or 90%? Right, the 10% of people that make it in trading, they are a lot better losers than the 90% who give up because they don't move their stop loss; they just accept the loss, you know. And before you take a trade, or before you if you're in a trade and you're about to stop out and you're like, oh, I'm going to move it, I think we're going up, and you keep moving down, the market keeps dumping and you keep moving away from the market, do you really think, raise your hand if you think that 10% of traders who make it, do you think they're doing that? No. And that's a big, big question you have to ask yourself. You know, if you're about to move your stop loss, you have to ask yourself, do you really think 10% of people who make a trade are doing this? Or the 90% of people doing it? The 90% definitely, that's why they fail. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to be a part of that 10% of people who make it, or do I want to be a part of that 90% of people who move their stop loss, they don't follow their plan, they're revenge trading? And that's the other thing that I like to have on my chart personally, because it's a little shorter. I just kind of have something that says 10% or 90% on my AGFX watermark. Again, you can customize it to say whatever you say. I think the default is like patience, discipline, whatever, but I feel like that's kind of generic. So that's kind of another scope to look at it. Now, raise your hand if you struggle with losing. Just raise your hand if you struggle with losing. Okay. So, do you mind if I use you as an example? Okay. So, have you ever taken a loss and so you struggle with losing? Have you ever taken a loss and you know one day you're like, okay, I'm just gonna stop out here and I'm done? And have you ever felt good about taking a loss? Because normally in your past you wouldn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sometimes. Sorry.
Yeah, you're gonna keep talking.
Okay. So. Yeah, back then I would take a loss and it'd be so hard to accept. You'd be really pissed about that outcome and all that. But as you, like you said, experience, keep going. Once you take a loss, you know, like you just accept it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And have you ever felt good about taking a loss though? Like, okay, I'm taking a loss. I feel great that I could actually take a loss this time. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the feeling that you guys have to understand. And I remember when I couldn't take losses, I always used to revenge trade. I remember one of my first times, like not revenge trading, I took like I don't know, it was like a $200 or $300 loss or something, I forgot, but I took the loss and I logged off. And I'm like, you know what? I just made a very good business decision that profitable people make. I took a loss and I can actually get away from my chair, and it actually felt good. And like, what do you mean it felt good? You just took a loss. And I'm like, it actually feels good because no one can actually get out of their chair after taking a loss. And I'm like, but I can. So I can already do what 90% of people can't do. Does that make sense, everyone? So that's something that you have to really think about too. Like, if you understand like the feeling of, okay, I can take this loss and walk away, it's a really, really good feeling to have, in my opinion. And you know, when I learned how to do that, that really upped my trading a lot because, you know, I'd avoid run trading after that. But actually, this guy DM'd me the other day. He's been trading for like I think 4 years, and he's a really good trader. He did a lot. What happened was he'd take 9 winning setups in a row, or 9 or 10, and then guess what happened when he lost once? lose count, okay? And it's because he won so much. It's just like kind of in soccer and football, like, you know, when we used to play in high school, you win so much that you couldn't handle loss, and that's what happened to him. And he was a good trader, and it wasn't until like probably a couple months ago where he's like texting me, he's like, yo, Dodgy, I just took a loss. And I'm like, okay, so what do you do? And he goes, he's like, I took a walk. And I was so happy because he and he's young, like, and I was so happy because he couldn't take a loss. He couldn't just get off from the screen and go take a walk. He just couldn't. So when he texted me that, I'm like, dude, that's awesome. You know, I know the loss sucked, but that's awesome because think about it. If you're taking 10 trades in a row and they're all winners, and keep in mind, I'm not talking about 5-hour trades. Like I said, they're all like mostly 1 hours because that's kind of my strategy. If you could do that, do you really think you're going to take like 3 or 4 more losses in a row? And that's kind of the question I asked him. And he goes, no. If I win 10 times in a row and I take 10 more trades, it's probably not going to happen. So that's kind of what helped him kind of realizing, okay, if I take this loss, you know, I have a high winner anyways, who cares? I'm just going to move on. The market will be there tomorrow. And again, it's a really good story. I tell it to a lot of people because a lot of people struggle with that. Most of the people actually join my live streams, they come in for my strategy, to learn my strategy. And I always say, after they leave or after they become profitable, I always ask them, when you started watching me, did you think you were going to learn my strategy? And they're like, yeah, but I ended up learning way more psychology, how to take a loss, stuff like that. And the reason I say that is because every strategy works. And most people who like try to learn from me, they're like, oh, I'm going to learn this best strategy ever. But what they don't realize is I'm teaching them how to take a loss. I'm teaching them a lot of psychological things, and that's what makes them profitable truly. And they don't understand that. So like, it's just a big thing, and every strategy works. At the end of the day, you know, you can pop a EMA in your chart. It's still going to work at some point. But it's just really, really important to understand. All right. So this is just like a quick activity because I just have a question. Okay, stand up if you've ever taken 7 or more losses in a row, and then.
In one trade?
Yeah, no, whatever.
Oh.
Okay, you have. Okay, stand up if you've ever taken more than like 7 in a row losses.
Everybody's hesitant to stand up.
Okay.
Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
No reason to lie.
Okay. All right, now sit back down again. I'm curious how this is going to change. Now, stand up if you've taken more than 7 losses in a row after learning like a good strategy and you back tested it, whatever. Anyone? Like you've learned a really good strategy, it's pretty good, you back test it. Have you ever taken 7 in a row like that? Because I'm sure a lot of you, like when you first started trading, yeah, you probably lost a lot. But after learning a strategy, how many people in stand up have taken 7 losses in a row after learning like a good strategy that you back tested? Okay. So I feel like it's a little less. So a little less than before, as you guys see. And then, so the way I'm trying to go this is going to actually relate to my next slide. But the reason I asked that is because someone told me they took like 10 losses in a row one time. And I'm like, if you're taking, and I don't want to move you guys away from a strategy. I feel like if you take more than 10 losses in a row, like, would you guys agree that the strategy is probably not the greatest?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you just shouldn't be, like, I don't know, that's up for debate, but, I mean, because you need a 10-hour trade to offset that. And how often do you find 10-hour trades? Yeah, once a month, even sometimes never for people. And this is where, like, math is important, okay? So let me just explain the math behind this. Okay. Are you guys all familiar with prop firms?
Yeah.
Hopefully. If you buy a $50,000 account, you know, the drawdown of that account is like a 50K account, which, yeah, it's 2,500, which I think is better than like the 100K because it has like the best trailing the drawdown to take profit ratio. And you're risking $200 per trade, okay? So you start at 50,000, the account blows if you get 47,500. You could lose 9 trades in a row and still not blow the account. Okay, and you have to understand that. It's very, very important to understand that. How many of you guys think you're going to lose 9? Okay, how many of you guys with a working strategy think you're going to lose 9 trades in a row? Raise your hand. Okay, probably not. Okay, if you're losing 9 trades in a row, like I said, you might need to reassess your strategy just a little bit. I think that's very unrealistic to lose 9 trades in a row because, like I said, you'd have to have a 9-hour trade to make up for that. And understanding that math is so important because here's the thing: if you're trading, you take a trade, you take a bunch of 1-hour trades. You start with 50,000, you're up. Okay, want to trade one day, 50,200. Okay, want to trade another day, 50,400. Okay, now you lose a trade. You're back at 50,200. And this is where people start revenge trading. And the reason you can't do that is because, and they don't understand the math, the reason you can't do that is because your revenge trading skews the results of, okay, now I can only take 2 trades until I blow the account. So if you can truly understand that like buying a $50,000 account and you can lose 10 trades in a row before it blows, theoretically, with no trailing drawdown, because if you know Apex, it's a little tougher, but theoretically, you should not be blowing the account because you should not be taking 10 losses in a row. And that's like the #1 mistake I see people doing these prop firms. They over leverage, they oversize, and they blow their account on 2 trades. I'm like, dude, how are you blowing your account on 2 trades? That's just not really. You need to risk the amount that it's going to take you more than 10 trades to blow the account. If you're risking the amount where you're going to blow it on 4 in a row, then that's too much. Because raise your hand if you could lose 4 in a row trades. Yeah, you could easily lose maybe 4 in a row trades. I mean, that's a fine number. And that means you're risking too much. So understanding the math behind how prop firms work, and even live accounts too. Like if I put like $10,000 in a live account, I want to be able to take 10 trades. You need capital to trade. If you can't lose 10 trades in a row, then how are you going to take 10 trades? You can't. So you need to risk, what you're willing to lose, and you need to understand that, okay, if I lose now, cool, I can lose 9 more times. Is that likely to happen? Probably not. So that's understanding from that component is very good as well. Okay. The markets will always be there, and if you don't see your strategy, you don't see your model that day, or maybe you do and it's a loss, who cares? Because it's going to be there the next day. And people with screen time will understand what I mean. Like, you're going to see your strategy so many times, and would you rather take 5 trades with your strategy and then 5 other trades that's not your strategy? Or would you rather take 10 trades that are all your strategy? Yeah, all 10 trades, right? Because then okay, I backtested the strategy, like I know what the results are likely going to be. So understand that is just super, super important. And if you don't understand the math behind, okay, how much can I risk to lose 10 trades? Then you're not going to be profitable. Because, like I said, it all comes back to the same loop. You're likely not going to lose 10 trades in a row. So that's just super important to understand. So another thing I like to do, and this actually helped me. This is how I learn how to take a loss. And this is coming from an athlete who I played every sport, you name it. But what I tell people is, I tell them, I said so someone asked me, and I told this to many people, but I told them, the people who struggle, I tell them to buy a 50K account, okay? I tell them to buy a 50K account, and instead of longing where you usually would, I told them, try to short it and lose on purpose and lose a 1-hour trade. So just do 1R, what you normally take. Don't do the actual TP though, because some of you guys probably take 1-hour trades, and lose on purpose. Now, you have to lose 10 trades to blow the account. So I tell them, I'm like, challenge yourself. On a 50K account, try to lose 10 times and blow the account. And they're like, what do you mean? That's easy. I'm like, no, it's not. It's easy to lose once and blow the account on 1 trade, but it's not easy to take 10 trades to do it. Does that make sense? And I challenge them to that, and they're like, oh, well, I can just full port 1 trade and it'd be wrecked. I'm like, okay, well, that's not the exercise. You need to lose it in 10 or more trades. And does that sound difficult? Yeah, it is. Now think about that from the opposite perspective. It's also difficult to do that, losing, and that's why I'm saying, it's easy to it's not hard to not build an account once you understand that. So it's like a little exercise, people. And out of everyone I've told to do that, I would say 50% complete it, and the other 50 don't. And the other 50, a few of them give up, a few of them just don't want to DM me again. They're probably, what's this advice? But for the people who pass it, I have noticed a drastic improvement, and that's what I did. I bought an Apex account one day. My buddy Nick back there, I used to text him all the time, like, dude, I just took a loss, and then I show him like a bunch of buys and sells where I revenge trade after, and it's like when you learn that the math behind it, it's a whole lot easier to understand. Okay, I can pass, I just can't lose 10 trades in a row, which again, all goes back to the same thing, which is likely not going to happen, right? By the way, I don't know how you guys feel about backtesting. The reason I don't tell people to do it on backtesting is because in backtesting, I hate how you can skip like an FX. Who's used FxReplay before? Yeah, you can skip the candles, and it's not really like a lot. It's forward testing, you're a lot more emotional. You have to wait an hour for all the candles to play out. But I tell people to do the 50K Apex account thing because it's going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks. If you do an FxReplay, it defeats the purpose. I don't really like backtesting. I think forward testing and watching the market and being within the market in live time, I think that's a lot more beneficial because it's just how the market moves. Backtesting is good for really mechanical strategies, but when you're doing stuff like this where you try to lose 10 times in a row, yeah, sure, you can do that on FxReplay, but what's it going to take you? 2 hours? Right? You got to do it on a live account, and it's got to take you a span of 2 weeks because that's how trading in the real world works. So that's another thing I tell people. The other thing I do, and this is really cool, is how when you trade, they'll some softwares will give you a calendar, and I would definitely write this in notes. I think you guys should all try this. How some softwares will okay, here's your calendar, here's the days you're green or red, and it's all based off P&L, correct? I actually did a challenge with some of my students where I did a rules calendar example. So I gave them the calendar of the year, and I gave them a doc, and I tell them, okay, write your rules here. Boom, boom, boom. They write bullets. Some people have 1 rule, some people have 10 rules, and I tell them, make a checklist of your rules, and if you follow your rules that day, then mark that day green. Even if you're red, mark that day green. And I told people to do that. And the amount of traders I've seen get better just from this is insane because people will tell me yeah, I'm ready for the day, but I want to be green on the calendar because theoretically, if you're going to do this example, should you be red at all? No, you shouldn't. Your calendar should be all green. And there are people people that I was doing this with, they would have red days, and I'm like, dude, it's literally you just check this off, follow this rule. I'm like, dude, you have to be green. This is a guaranteed green day. Don't you want to be green? And they're like, yeah, Dodge, I do, but it's not P&L. I'm like, who cares about your P&L? If you can be green following your rules every single day, that's going to translate directly to your P&L. Okay, and that's a big thing because P&L just doesn't matter. Okay, I promise you, it doesn't matter. Once you understand the math behind everything, you just scale. Like I said, P&L doesn't matter. If you follow your rules and you do this challenge, if you could honestly do this challenge and for a whole straight month you follow your rules every single day, I bet you'll be green, and I bet you'll be positive. Okay, because there's no way you're going to revenge trade. There's no way you're going to do any dumb stuff, right? You're going to be green, and if you aren't, maybe your strategy just isn't that good. But it's a big thing that I've done with my students that it's helped them a lot. And I had this one dude, the same guy did this to take the 10 wins in a row, then the loss and he blew his account. He did the same thing. He followed his rules every day. He's like, Dodgy, that was easy. And I'm like, I know, when you look at it in this perspective, it is easy. And he's like, and that's what he does now. So he doesn't even look at his P&L anymore. And he just says it translates, So adopting the mindset of not caring about P&L is another important thing, and following rules to not revenge trade. It's going to prevent taking losses. But this is a fun little example I did. I think I made the calendar on Canva, but you can do whatever. There's a bunch of calendars. But basically, if you follow your rules, shade the day green, and theoretically, your whole month should be green. And check your P&L at the end of the month. See if it helps. If it doesn't, well, maybe that won't work for you. Maybe you should try like losing on purpose, but that's a big thing that helped me. So to finish it off, okay, doing the 50K count thing where you lose on purpose, I know it sounds dumb, but that's the thing that helped me, so you can always try that. We talked about the rules calendar challenge, which I guess it depends. Like some people really struggle to follow the rules, and other people, it just depends on the trader. But some people probably the rules calendar challenge is probably going to translate better. I guess it just depends on the person. Personally, I was an athlete and I'm super competitive. That's why losing on purpose helped me more, because I learned what it felt like. I'm like, okay, this is a loss. You know, I have to be done. Like I just learned what it felt like. You know, it sucks staring at your P&L and you're like down $2,000 and you're like, oh my god, it sucks. But if you can do it 10 times in a row, you'll get used to it. And when you get used to it, that's how your brain learns. Like, okay, it's whatever. You know, if you understand the math, you're not going to blow your account anyways because you lose 10 trades in a row, which is likely not going to happen. Like I said. And the last thing I want to say is, you guys are all here. You guys are all like-minded people. I'm sure you've met people. Like yesterday, we went to the beach with a few guys. I'm sure you met other traders here. I would definitely recommend getting some people's contact info, maybe, because having a person to keep you accountable is another really good thing that I've been trying to do. I just set up these accountability programs in my mentorship thing, and basically I pair them up and I have them get on a call every week, and they had to tell and show everything they did that week. And how silly would it be if they showed them the screenshot that I showed you guys in the first slide? Pretty silly. So it just helps you not do stuff like that. So having a partner, having an accountability person really, really helps. I have a lot of people, and I used to text with this one guy, his name was DC, and I used to text him all the time. And then it slowly branched out, but now I'm good on my own. But it all started with having a guy to keep me accountable. I'm like, dude, I texted my friend DC, I'm like, dude, I gotta stop doing this, He's like, and he always used to call me about it. He always used to ask me why are you doing this? And I'm like, because I just want to make money, and that you can't trade just to make money. That's dumb. And having that accountability partner just really helps, telling them what you do, because you don't do any dumb stuff. So when I was live streaming the other day, you know how when you're event trading, it almost feels like you're just not yourself. You're your brain is not connected to your actual self, and you're like, what am I doing? But you keep pressing the button. You keep pressing the button anyways. I like to do these little skits just to be funny on my stream. And I started playing, I talked to these guys, I'm like, okay, so basically, when you guys start event trading, do you just listen to metal rock music and just start yeah? And I started playing metal rock music in the background, and everybody's just dying and dying. I'm like, okay, what's the point of showing you guys this? Because it sounds silly. That's why. I'm showing you how dumb it sounds. Playing metal rock music, you're just spamming buttons. Do you really think 10% of people who make a profit are doing that? Or do you really think that's a good business decision? Absolutely not. So the point of the exercise was just to kind of show them how dumb it was. And then I'm like, guys, I know you're laughing at this, but that's literally you when you do this. And they're like, yeah, you're right. And it's just a little funny thing, and then they realize how stupid they are. I'm like, yeah, you are stupid for doing that. So just I like to do little things like that. But yeah, that's basically it. And the last thing I want to leave you off with is, you're never going to take 10, if you understand you're never going to take more than 10 losses in a row, you can go really, really far with understanding that. And that's the one thing you have to understand. If, like I said, if you do, then your strategy's probably not good. Probably change strategies, but I don't want to tell you to do it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So. I think we're going 10 minutes.
Do you want to do a little Q&A first?
Yeah, sure.
If anybody's got any questions, just raise your hand. Nobody.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
On your losing days, do you feel like there's some characteristics of the market that you consistently are seeing?
Yeah. Well, it's changed now because so when I used to lose, usually every single time I lost, there was like less than 2 fair value gaps that formed throughout the whole day, like the whole morning. And then I just, if I ever see no fair value gaps forming in like the near game session, I just don't trade. That's where I used to lose a lot, where I just see no fair value gaps. So I'm like, no fair value gaps, no trades. Because if there's no fair value gaps forming, then that means there's probably no good displacement, meaning there's probably no good trade. So that's what, when I used to lose, that was like the one thing I noticed. So now whenever we form like less than 3 fair value gaps on like the 1 to 5 minute time frame in like the first 30 minutes, I just don't even trade the rest of the session. So, and now I don't take those dumb losses anymore. So, yeah.
So, thank you for sharing your experience, man. Appreciate the presentation. I also come from an athletic background, so the competitiveness I can relate to, and accepting those losses in the beginning was super hard. What behavioral changes did you do to change your habits and accepting those losses? Because it's one thing to reinforce good behavior, but you also have to find a way to reinforce yourself out of bad behavior.
See, that's the thing. That's like where I started losing a purpose. You can't lose a soccer game on purpose. You can't lose a basketball game on purpose. So I started losing trading on purpose, and that, and like I said, every trader is different, and that's what worked with me. So I'm not gonna say that's, and it's not really behavior change. It's something you just do. Like I just did it as like a challenge. I was like, I wanted to see if I could legitimately lose 10 trades in a row, like more than 10 in a row, and blow an account, and that just helped me. And I guess after doing that, something in my brain changed. And that's where I changed. And it's not like I changed it on purpose. It's just like you do it so many times. Okay, now my brain or mindset changed. Like, okay, I just lost 10 times in a row. So what if I lose once when I'm live trading? I can lose 10 times in a row. I can lose once. And my brain just changed, I guess, doing that for me.
Okay, so you never had like some like reward mechanism for yourself?
No. Do you think all these 60-year-old traders on the New York Stock Exchange floor have a reward mechanism? Probably not.
Maybe they skip on a fear that day?
Maybe. I mean, when you trade, you have to be a robot. You're literally going against algorithms. You just have to be a robot. TP, stop loss, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do, stop, break even, robot. Like that's, my brain just adopted that mindset over time. So that's kind of why, and that's not really behavior, it's just, robots don't have a behavior. They're just robots. So that's kind of what I think about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think part of that reward mechanism is just following the rules. Like,
and being able to make a calendar, like being okay. If I can follow my rules, 15 days in a row, my calendar is all green. Maybe my P&L is right a few of those days, but if I can follow my rules, do you really think I'm going to build my account? Probably not. And it's how good does it feel when you see like 10 green days in your calendar? Pretty good, right? You're like, damn, I can actually do this. So if you could see theoretically a million days green, following your rules, it probably will feel really good, right? And it's going to translate to your P&L, or should at least, as long as your strategy is decent, which ICP is very good once you learn it. So.
Behind you. I'm just curious how much of your growth over the last couple of years you would attribute to your streaming and the accountability you get from just your community.
A lot of my growth the main reason I grow is because I guess I guess because my strategy and my trades are good, I guess. It kind of sucks, but when you only teach about psychological stuff, that's the boring part. Like people don't care about it, and I feel like you grow slower. So a lot of my growing and accountability stuff has come from reading my strategy, because when you put yourself in the shoes of a new trader, do you really think the first thing they're typing in on YouTube is how to master psychology in trading? No. They're looking up 100% winner strategy. That's what I did when I first started. So. A lot of it was actually the strategy, which is kind of a really sad point because a lot of people don't get to the psychological or mental part, and that's why they fail. So it really wasn't due to that. It was really just because of my strategy. And I don't want to get too much into the technicals, but when you all know what a fair value gap is, obviously. Yeah, when you see a bearish fair value gap, and then you see an instant bullish like a BPR, instant bullish one back up, and we see sell side. I mean, it just doesn't lose that much. And people kind of caught on my social media, and then people started watching my YouTube, and even people who don't know me, like seeing the charts, they kind of, you know, I'm the guy they think of, like, oh, Dodgy showed this. Like, I'm not trying to learn from him, but they've seen it on my Instagram or whatever, and they kind of it reads into your mind. So that's kind of why I grew. And the sad part is I didn't grow because of psychology and mental and all that, because that's the stuff people don't care about. So.
But it sounds a lot like it's like a heavy conviction in your strategy. Like you just
yeah, it is. Definitely is. You know, when you see.
How did you get that though?
Just watching the market for so long, and obviously ICT in the market's like an algorithm, which I believe in. But I've also looked at a bit of footprint charts, and you really think about like what a bearish or rally gap going down and then a bullish or like it's reversing. What is that behind the scenes? You know, it's a bunch of smart money, a bunch of these giant orders, and then all of a sudden they get reversed. And what's going to happen 80% of the time is all those orders now getting inversed. Shorts are going to end up covering because they're like, okay, we're probably not going down, which causes the market to go up even more. And then people are just going to buy because they see all these shorts got wrecked. So it's kind of like a win-win situation, which, I mean, seeing that so many times on the chart just gave me so much conviction. And I've been looking at the same signature price for probably like 3 years now. So watching it, like the true answer is watching it over and over and over and over again every day. That's the true answer for like 3 years. So.
And I appreciate you sharing everything.
Yeah, no problem.
I want to add a little bit because just from an outside perspective, I think you treat trading way differently. Like just from an outside perspective, make sure you guys take notes of this because he's structuring his trading in a way that it's process driven, right? So the decisions that you make, regardless of what your P&L is saying for the day, did I follow the rules? You can follow every rule in your book and follow the strategy, you can still lose money. But it's a good day still, right?
Yeah.
Have those exercises in place, make sure that you're following your processes, following your system, and it's just a numbers game. The market's gonna be here tomorrow, right? There's no need to overtrade or revenge trade. You're gonna find another setup. It's just, you have to be able to stay alive long enough and follow that process. If you're off track with your processes, you should automatically recognize that and get back on track, right? And that's the whole point of having a rule-based system where you're following your processes every single day. If you get off track, you know you're on tilt, and you just gotta get back in sync.
Yeah. Also, like taking back to this screenshot too, like imagine this is little Timmy. Little Timmy just got into trading, and this is what his chart looks like. I'm pretty sure if he did this, and then he like texts, you know, maybe he has a bunch of mentors. He texts him like, it's like, Dodgy, please stop, please help me. Like, why do I do this? Like, make me stop. If he did this, and then the next day he took a loss, he would probably be like, damn, I just took a loss. Yesterday I was doing all this crap, but I actually just took a loss. And he feels good about it. Like, that's what you want to truly feel. You want to feel good about taking a loss instead of doing this. Taking a loss, one loss, is way better than doing whatever this is. And it's so much better, it looks so clean in chart, you know, take a loss, I'm done. I'm going for the walk, I'm going to the beach, you know, maybe I'm going skiing if you're up in Canada. But, you know, just, you gotta feel good about taking a loss because most people can't do that, so. Any other questions?
You take a loss for us live?
I took a trade right before our presentation, but it wasn't a loss. On my vlog, I basically said, I'm like, if this loses, I can use this as an example, but it ended up stopping me in profit. But I was trying. I took a long side. I don't know what the market's doing now, but I basically longed here, and I just got trying to stop. But I was going to use it as an example, but I didn't lose, unfortunately. So I would have. But yeah. So. All right. Pretty much it for me.
All right, thanks. We got a lunch break until when? 1?
Yep.
Until 1 o'clock. The lunch room is right behind us. So grab some lunch, network with some people, you know, have a good time, and yeah, we'll see you guys back here in an hour.